Alright, I'm going to call this video Conor McGregor's win streak, but I think it's more just me talking about, I just put Conor McGregor's win streak because people will probably click on it because it's something more current. But it's kind of like win streaks in general that I've personally watched over the years in mixed martial arts. And not only am I aware of the win streaks, I personally watch them, and I think that's a little bit different than somebody getting into mixed martial arts. They go and watch a bunch of fights. Oh, there was a win streak here, but it's when you actually watch it unfold, you have a better understanding of mixed martial arts, and it can help you betting fights. It can help you kind of watch MMA unfold, like for when this happens in the future, because I've noticed a pattern. When people are on win streaks, when they're a feared fighter, I mean, think Ronda Rousey. You know, I think a lot of these girls were broken before they even got in there because they didn't really perform as good against her as you've seen them against other girls. You know, was it because Ronda Rousey was better? We're learning now that it really wasn't it. It's just, when someone is on a win streak and they are a feared fighter, you see this pattern. I mean, man, Fedor, first of all, the greatest heavyweight of all time, just because of what he did and how long he did it. We've never seen a heavyweight do what Fedor did and go that long. There was one point, he was a Pride champion, undefeated in Pride, and coming out of Pride, fighting in Affliction, and I think going into Brett Rogers, like he had not had a fight go out of the first round for years. Like when Brett Rogers went in just into the second round with Fedor. Nobody had even taken Fedor into the second round for years. Like it was like a number of years. Like he was just, people were just afraid of the guy, and he was just annihilating everybody. And, we've seen this. Back in the day, he had some long fights, so people knew he had the stamina. He always had the stamina. But, you look at Anderson Silva, long win streak, and, Nick Diaz, that's another one. I think he was on, when he fought BJ Penn, I believe he was on a 9-fight win streak, and that beat BJ Penn. That was a 10-fight win streak. And I remember, it's funny when you watch these win streaks, people forget. They see these guys lose, and they forget, how big a lot of these fights were. I remember when Nick Diaz fought BJ Penn, people had BJ Penn winning the fight. He was the favorite in that fight in a lot of people's eyes. BJ Penn was still a feared fighter, and it was like when people are, and I've noticed too, like this was like Conor McGregor, like I had made a video that Conor McGregor's what was it? The ride is over, when he lost. And it's because when you see these guys lose that are on these tears, they're never the same after that. Like look at Nick Diaz. I remember Nick Diaz when he was going to fight Carlos Condit. I was watching an interview with Bas Rutten, and he was interviewing Carlos Condit, and he was just like, his ground. This is Bas Rutten talking about Nick's ground game, and just talking about his stand-up. He just knocks everybody out, and he asked Carlos Condit. He's like, so what are you gonna do? like what are you gonna do? Like you can't beat him on the ground. You can't beat him standing up. And I don't remember how Carlos answered that fight, but answer was he's going to run away from him. You can't submit somebody and you can't knock him out if you're running away from him. And that's what Carlos did, and and Nick has not won a fight since. It's like, these fighters get to a certain point to where the game kind of catches up with them. You know, there's enough footage of them. None of them really seem to change their fight strategy. They all kind of stick to the same thing, and the fight game catches up with them. They get a little bit older, and you're never the same. They're never the same since after that. You know, is that same thing going to happen to Conor McGregor? I think so. I don't think he's going to go on another win streak. I don't think he's going to beat Nate in the rematch. And you know, even if he does, you know, I don't know where he's going to go, but I just don't see him winning another 5-6 fights in a row. Just because of the pattern of all this. You know, George St. Pierre lost to Matt Serra when he knocked him out. So that was one guy, you know, he came back. However, you know, I think, you know, George St. Pierre, he never really, you know, remember, this is a long time ago, a lot of these fights, you know, it's a while back, and not all the best fighters were in the UFC. George St. Pierre was not fighting the best fighters in, you know, in the world. You know, like, I really do honestly think that if you had thrown, like, Melvin Manhoff in his prime, or, you know, Melvin Manhoff in, say, 2006, threw him in there with George St. Pierre, I mean, there's a really good chance that Melvin Manhoff would have just knocked GSP out, just destroyed him. I know the ground game advantage of GSP, but they're going to end up back up on their feet. And somebody like Melvin Manhoff's striking was light years ahead of anybody in mixed martial arts, especially when he was in his prime. And you can go watch him against Melvin Manhoff versus Robbie Lawler. I use that as an example. You know, people, you know, think of Robbie Lawler and they think how good his stand-up is. It's like, no, man, he's not anywhere near the level of a stand-up of you know, of Melvin Manhoff. It's kind of like, you know, a heavyweight mixed martial arts fighter stand-up versus Badr Hari in his prime. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's not even anywhere near close to that. Now, this is mixed martial arts. There's other things that factor in. There's other ways to win. But the patterns I've seen is that when guys are on win streaks and they're a feared fighter, that mental aspect, it's a really big part of it, because people literally just don't know what to do. And in the confidence of the fighter, and just like I said, the game just catches up with them. The more footage that's out there, it's like, you know, Fedor, like, you know, like I said, up until the point where Fedor lost, there really wasn't that much footage to watch of the guy. I mean, it was almost like, okay, I'm getting ready to fight Fedor, let's watch his last couple fights. His last couple fights are over like that, so it's like, you know, say coming out of the Tim Sylvia fight, and you're going to fight Fedor, and you're like, let's look at what's, you know, how can we plan against this? I mean, the guy just comes in there and just starts big uppercuts, and then jumps on you, you know, chokes you out, and that's it. You know, so like, and it's kind of the same thing with Conor McGregor. You're like, what else can this guy do? We only seen him for a couple minutes. He comes in, knocks guys out, you know, knocks out Dustin Poirier, and just like, man, you know. So when you're going in to face somebody like that, but now, like, see, kind of watching the Nate Diaz, even the Nate Diaz finished him, you know, in the second round. But there's more footage out there of Conor McGregor, and you can actually physically seeing him tire, physically seeing him slow. There's more video footage of him to watch and study how he fights in actual fights, not just training. And the game just catches up with these guys. It's really all it is. And I think this is just something that people need to understand, because I get a lot of, you know, like when I made that fight, I understand it's the Conor McGregor fans, and, you know, they're just going to dislike it because I put the Conor McGregor ride as over. When actually I'm a fan of Conor. It's just, I'm just like to keep it real of what's going on. But I do notice that when these guys are on this terror and they lose, it just seems like they're never they're never the same. It's almost like they get exposed. Fedor was the one guy that I don't necessarily think that he got exposed. He just got older, But some of these other fighters, like, they're young, like Ronda Rousey. I mean, she was young. Conor McGregor, right in his prime, he lost, and that's him losing to Nate Diaz. Like, say Conor beats Nate in the rematch, and they make Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor, which I don't think they'll do because Eddie's going to probably beat Conor McGregor. That's a huge psychological advantage, that we just watched Nate Diaz beat you, and then you beat him. But Nate Diaz, prior to beating Michael Johnson, was ranked like 20, and he was losing to everybody, which just goes to show. Because Nate, Nate is amazing. He's a really amazing fighter, and I actually think that he may even be better than Nick. That he might actually be a more skilled, better fighter than Nick Diaz. He just never really had. He's just been fighting like, the number one fighters, and it's the best fighters in the world. Nate, as talented as he is, he boxing with pro boxers, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and but you throw him in there against the number one, Benson Henderson, right when Benson Henderson is like maybe not being drug tested and on just a complete reign of terror himself, people are going to look different, and I think that applies to Conor McGregor. I mean, Jose Aldo, but Jose Aldo's a little tiny guy, and it's great that he knocked him out, and it is impressive. But when you start putting him in there against the elite of the elite, and now you're looking at Eddie Alvarez as the UFC champion. This guy was a champion in Bellator. And you're talking about a different level of competition, and it's like some of these guys, like I said about GSP, I don't think he ever really, I don't think he ever really fought the guys that could beat him. I think they were in other organizations at the time, and he just happened to be able to use lay and pray and win by points and just, wrestle people, and nobody was good enough to submit him. I mean, look at Michael Venom Page. Now, this is a guy not in the UFC. Jump in the air, flying knee, crack Cyborg's skull. Say Cyborg. I mean, did you see anybody ever trying to do that against GSP? You could watch GSP. He rushes in for the takedown. How come nobody could never jump up and knee him in the skull? You know what I mean? It just nobody ever did. He just didn't come across that person. That was up at that level. But anyway, these guys, like, they're on a reign. And you watch, GSP is another example. If he comes back, he's going to get worked. He's lost. His reign's over. People are not, overwhelmed with, oh my God, this guy's so good, and and he's so strong, and people are not going to be afraid. They're just not. And these other guys have studied all this footage and been like, whoa, in their head, when they see these guys on these win streaks, these guys are so good that they train their game to be even better than these people. Like, they're not as good as they're perceived to be, is what I'm saying, and I think that people see that and they're intimidated by it. But also other fighters, they haven't fought them, they use that as the standard, the bar of where they need to be. If they see someone's a black belt, they're like, man, guess what? I'm going to get out and I'm going to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And they'll seek out someone that's maybe even better in jiu-jitsu than the other guys that are champions black belt. You see what I'm saying? So it's I just want to talk a little bit on that, and that's just a pattern that I've seen of win streaks that come to an end, and people are human, and it just never, as much as we want to see Nick Diaz, come in UFC and, at 30 years old and go on a 6 or 7 fight win streak, it's probably not going to happen. The same as a 40-year-old Fedor is not going to come in the UFC, and knock out a bunch of guys in a row and be the UFC champion. It's probably not going to happen. I'll see you guys later.